Hello, Yurit. I really enjoyed your presentations on the wild animals. Now, just today, what I want to do is I want to go through then some of the theory for classification. So I'm going to ask you to watch this video. It'll last then about 15 minutes, and then there's some work I want you to do at the end of it.
Okay, Yurid, let's learn then about classification. Now, what do we want to learn in the next 15 or 20 minutes? Well, we want to learn then how organisms are grouped. So basically, we know that there's lots and lots and lots and lots of different living things, and all those living things are called organisms. And what scientists do is scientists will group different organisms together. We want to learn the names of the different groups, and also we want to learn a bit more then about a group thing which are called the vertebrates. You might have heard of the vertebrates before in primary school, but you're just going to learn a little bit more about vertebrates then today, hopefully. So let's start things off then. This idea of classification, what does the word classification actually mean? Well, it is arranging organisms into groups according to similar features. Arranging organisms into groups according to similar features. Now, we know there's lots of different kinds of creatures out there. So again, scientists somewhere along the line had to devise how we could divide them into different groups. They could look to see whether they fly, or if the organism flies or doesn't fly. Now again, that's confusing, of course, because some groups like birds normally can't fly, but penguins, of course, which is the bird, cannot fly. They might look at whether or not the animals walk on two legs, like us, or whether they walk on 6 legs, like insects, 8 legs, like spiders, maybe more than that, like millipedes and centipedes, or even if they have legs at all. They might look at the colour. We know, of course, we're talking about all living things. So a lot of plants, of course, are green, so we could look at the colour of the plants. We could look at the size of the plants. We could think, well, some things are very, very big, like a giraffe or a rhinoceros or an elephant. Some things are very big and some things are very small. Like some pond life, like little things called amoeba, for example, they're very small. We could look to see whether or not they live on the land or whether they live in the sea. And also, of course, we could look to see whether the animals will do us any harm, whether the animals are harmful. So again, there's lots of different ways in which we could look at classifying, grouping different animals, different organisms. However, somebody had to come up with an idea to standardize things, to make sure that everybody was doing it exactly the same way. And that fell to a man called Carl Linnaeus. And this is Carl Linnaeus here at the bottom. And he was the person who thought up then today's way of naming different organisms. And what he did then was he thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these into different groups. And he thought, well, what can I put in? And what he did was he decided then that he would look at what we call a species. Now, this word species is quite an important word. Two things belong to the same species if they look very, very similar, but also if they can reproduce. Okay, if they can have babies, if they can reproduce, and their babies can also reproduce. Now, it's always hard to explain that, but if you think about then a horse and a donkey, they look quite alike. A horse can in fact reproduce with a donkey, and what happens is that they produce then what's called a mule. Now, a mule looks a bit like a donkey, looks a bit like a horse, but that mule itself, it can't have kids, it can't reproduce. So therefore, a horse and a donkey, even though they might look quite similar, they belong to two different species. Now, what he did then was he decided, I'm going to name all of these different organisms. And he thought, well, if I name them all English, then if you're in Spain, it would be a different name, or in German would be a different name, or China or anything else, you have different names. So he wanted to use in a language which didn't really change. A language, in fact, which had been used in medicine for a long, long time. So he decided then to use Latin. What he did then was he named all the living things which he could find, and he gave them all two names. Now, those names then, are universal. Everybody in the world uses these names and these scientific names when they're talking about different organisms. So, for example, humans, you might know of what humans' proper scientific name is. Well, their name then is Homo sapiens. So that's the proper name for humans then. It's quite a complicated system. I'm going to give you an example as to how complicated it is. I'm going to give you an example of one here then. Now I'm going to let you listen to an animal sound. I want you to try and identify what it actually is. Okay, so listen to this. So what does that sound like? Sounds a bit like something a monkey, but it's not a monkey. You might find it in the sea. It's quite big. It's very big, in fact. It's black and white. What is it? Any ideas? Well, if you guessed that it was an orca whale, you'd be right. So this is how then we properly identify different living organisms. So again, if we start off the top one, so we know of course that whales are animals. They have a backbone which runs down here, so therefore they are chordates. The chordates are a bit like vertebrates, if you've heard the word vertebrate before. So we've got these chordates. They're mammals. We'll come back to mammals later on in our little talk today, but they're mammals then. They belong to this group here, Psittacia. Now this group then is a group then of things which live in the sea. They include porpoises, they include these whales, and also in fact they include dolphins. Now then we need to go further down still, the family that they belong to. Well, this family in fact then also includes dolphins. So this Delphinidae is including dolphins, but then we need to go further still. Its genus name, okay, or Orcanus, and a species name then is of course orca. So we have these orca whales. So again, you can see it's quite a complicated system we have then for identifying different things. Now, if you were ever asked to remember the way in which those things are organized, well, again, we use little tricks. Sometimes in science it's useful to use little tricks. So again, the biggest group then, the group which contains the largest variety of different organisms, is called the kingdom. The next group down is called the phylum. Next group down is a class, and then we have the order, the family, the genus, and the species. Now you will not need to learn this for Key Stage 3, okay? But at GCSE you might need to learn it. And one of the things we do at GCSE is to try and help us remember these things here, is we use different rhymes. So if we think here, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. If you remember, kings play chess on fancy gold squares. If you can think about the first letter, that will help you then to remember the first letter of the different groups. But I say you're not going to need that for year 8 anyway though. Let's keep going. So we said all living things, all organisms can be divided up into different groups, or what's called different kingdoms. So one of which of course is the animal kingdom, but let's look at the other kingdoms we have out there as well then. All living things can be divided into these 5 different kingdoms. Now some of which you will have heard before. Certainly you will have heard of the animal kingdom before. You've probably heard of the plant kingdom before. Fungi, well, fungi or fungus, you've probably heard of it before as well. Bacteria, well, we know about bacteria. We know some bacteria is bad for us, but you've certainly heard the term bacteria. Then we have this other term, Protoctista. Now again, it's a weird word here, Protoctista. So what I'm going to do is going to tell you a little bit then about these different groups here then, okay? Now, confusingly enough, some of these have different names. So if we think, for example, about Protoctista, they're also called Protists, okay, just to confuse things. And bacteria, but bacteria then belongs to a group as well. Now, sometimes you hear it called prokaryotes, okay, which means without a nucleus. You might even hear about it called Monera. And Monera, in fact, is the word which you use in the textbooks. So here we have 5 different kingdoms which all living things belong to. Now, just to confuse things even more, of course, at the minute, COVID-19 is on the news at the minute. Of course, it's caused by a virus, and a virus then doesn't, in fact, belong to any of these categories. Okay, so again, can get even more confusing as time goes on then. But let's look then at these different kingdoms then. So first one we're going to look at then is the weird one, the Protists. Okay, so it's also called Protists. I think in your textbook it's called Protists, for example. Now again, these are very simple organisms. Now quite often you'll find these things living in water. If you go into the forest and you put your hand in the water in the forest, your hands will get dirty, and not only will they get dirty, they might pick up then some of these things here. Okay, now this is an amoeba. Okay, these are very simple things. Sometimes if you do get a chance, you can kind of scoop up some water. See if you have a bucket with you, maybe scoop up some of the water in a bucket, let it sit for a few minutes, and then when it sits and the water's completely stationary, you'll find these little specks, what look like little specks of dust and dirt moving around then. Okay, and those things then are things such as protists. Okay, now again, they are, even though they're very simple, they still have some quite skillful tricks. Okay, they can make food by photosynthesis. Okay, so they can use sunlight to combine carbon dioxide and water to make food. Okay, so they might do that. Other ones might then simply absorb food to its surface. Okay, they don't have mouths as such, they absorb food to the surface. Some of them have a cellulose cell wall, okay, like plants do, but some of them don't. Some of them are made of only one cell, and others are made of lots of cells. Like algae, for example, is a protist, and it's made of lots of cells. And again, examples here, we said amoeba was this one here, and also one called paramecium. These are very small things you might find in pond water. So that's protists. Then we have bacteria. Okay. Now bacteria, of course, here's bacteria here. There's lots of different kinds of bacteria. Okay, on your skin at this very second, there's lots of bacteria. Lovely thought. In your intestines at the minute, you've got millions and millions and millions and millions of bacteria. People reckon you've got more bacterial cells inside your intestines than you have normal cells, normal human cells in your whole body. So we've got these bacteria. What do? Well, they absorb food through the surface. They have cell walls around the outside, but they're not made of cellulose, but they do a different kind of cell wall made of a thing called murin, but cell wall. Also then they have no nucleus. They're only one cell, each of them, but they've no nucleus. Different kinds, well, bacteria, of course, and also algae belong to this kind of group, this Monera group as well here. Okay, so again, these are bacteria. Again, quite simple organisms. Now, kingdom, we've got the fungi. Okay, some of these you will be well aware of. Okay, this one here then is bread mold. So if you leave then something in your locker for too long, say hopefully you haven't, but say you left then some food in your locker before you got off, and then you come back then whenever you come back, and you look in your locker, certainly there'll be mold growing in your food. Okay, and this is a mold here. Now what it really does in fact then is, as the mold then as the mold grows in your food, what it does in fact then is attaches to your food. Okay, and what it does then, if you look here, it kind of makes these chemicals which dissolve the food. Those chemicals dissolve the food, turns it into kind of liquid food, and what happens in fact then is that the food can be absorbed then into your into the actual fungus then. Okay, so again, that's what happens here with a fungus. Now they also reproduce by little spores. You'll see up here these little spores of the fungus then. But these fungus a bit more complicated, a bit more complex than the protists and the bacteria. Again, they might make food by photosynthesis, or else they might absorb food, as I said. They have no cellulose in their cell walls. They might be made of a single cell, or else it might be made of lots of cells. And again, there are lots of different examples here. We mentioned bread molds. A mushroom, though, is a fungus as well, and even yeast, which you use to make bread, is also then a fungus. Then. So again, that's another kingdom then. Now then we get more complex as time goes on. We're now in the plant kingdom then. Now we know, of course, plants they can photosynthesize. We know, of course, that they use sunlight then, and they have chlorophyll. Not all of them, but they have chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll then can be used to absorb the sunlight. And they take in water through their roots. They take in carbon dioxide then through their leaves, and inside the leaves is where the actual sugar is made then. They all have cellulose cell walls. They can be single cell like you might find in the oceans. You have ones called phytoplankton, which are single cell plants. And of course, then you've got much bigger plants like our grass and our roses and our trees and everything else are all, of course, much bigger plants. And you've got lots of different kinds of plants. Algae, fern, mosses. They don't produce seeds. The conifers produce other things, and also flowering plants. You know, there is a wide variety then of different plants here as well. Now, let's move on to maybe the one we know most about then, which of course is the animals. So now you did these fantastic wild animal presentations. Certainly I learned a lot during those presentations. And again, there's lots of different kinds, of course, of different animals. We think about what all animals do though. We know that they, of course, they eat food, okay, eat organic food. They eat food which is once alive, so organic food. They have no cell walls. They may be made of one cell, okay, again, which you might find in the sea, called zooplankton, or else it might be made of lots of cells. And again, we've got a wide variety of these different animals in. Now, some ones are very simple, some ones are more complex. There's jellyfish, worms, arthropods, which include insects, mollusks, echinoderms, that's like starfish, fish, amphibia, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So again, we've got lots of different groups of animals in. Now what we can do then is we can divide our animals up into vertebrates, which have a backbone, and invertebrates like our starfish, which of course don't have a backbone then. So let's concentrate now more on the vertebrates. So vertebrates here. Again, we can divide this into different groups again. We've got then our mammals, we've got our amphibians, we've got our reptiles, we've got our birds, and we have our fish. Now, I know you already know quite a bit about these different groups here, but I'm just going to revise then some of these different groups with you then. Okay. So let's have a look at mammals first of all. We are, of course, mammals, as is this little squirrel. Now, they all have, we have, and they have then lots of fur over their bodies. Okay. Now, in our case, then we don't have as much hair in our bodies, but again, certainly most of our mammals then have quite thick fur then. Okay. So you can fur. Also, they have lungs. We also all have lungs. We all breathe in. We all breathe in air. And we all get our oxygen then from the air then. So mammals have lungs and fur. Also, then we have a constant temperature. In our case, where it's about 37.4-ish degrees. That's kind of temperature. Again, it's kept at that temperature then. That kind of means that the reactions inside our cells will happen fast enough to keep us alive. But there is a disadvantage because a lot of our energy is actually used up keeping our bodies warm, which again can be quite wasteful then. Now, what happens, of course, is we reproduce internally. Okay, I think we all know what that means. We reproduce internally, and they give birth then to live young. Okay, so they don't lay eggs, for example. They give birth to live young then. Okay, so those are mammals. Then, of course, we have our amphibians. Okay, now people get confused with amphibians. I like to remind people that you might have heard the army then have amphibious vehicles. Okay, if you've ever been down to Dublin, maybe there is you can go on this trip down in Dublin where you get in a car stroke boat thing. You go around the town in the car, and then what happens is you go into the water and you actually go and see parts of Dublin from the water then. It is an amphibious vehicle. It can go both in the water and also on the land. And again, that's kind of what we have with amphibians then. Amphibians certainly start off their life in the water in terms of tadpoles, and as time goes on, they go on to the land, of course, when they turn into frogs then. So we say then that they they've lungs. When they're older, they have lungs. When they're younger, of course, they don't. When they're tadpoles, for example, when they're tadpoles, they absorb oxygen through their skin then. So again, we've got then these amphibians. Their body temperature changes. Now, people talk about it being cold-blooded. Technically, it's not cold-blooded. Okay, it's not always cold. Sometimes it's warm. Sometimes it might even be warmer than us. So again, their temperature changes quite a bit then. Also, they reproduce. Now, they reproduce externally. So the sperm cells and egg cells meet outside their bodies, and again, they lay eggs in. So again, these are different amphibians. People get confused between amphibians and reptiles. Now, again, one of the big differences between an amphibian and a reptile is their skin. If you feel a frog, for example, it's got kind of moist skin. It's constantly kind of losing water through its skin, so it's moist skin. Whereas reptiles then tend to have then dry scales then. Okay, so they've got these dry scales. So amphibians tend to have moist skin, whereas reptiles tend to be quite dry then. Again, their body changes a bit like the amphibians. They can be very warm, they can be very cold. If you think about then a snake maybe in the desert, when it's maybe mid-morning where it's coolish, it might go out and it might kind of sit in a rock and bask in the sun and get heated up. When it gets too hot, what it does is it goes and hides in the shade. So its temperature, its body temperature might go up to about then 40 degrees. It might go down to maybe 15 degrees. So its body changes again. Its body temperature changes quite a bit here then. They reproduce internally. Okay, might lay in each other's bellies, for example. And what happens is that they lay eggs, of course, then. So you've got these reptiles in. Speaking of eggs, let's move on to the next one, which is birds then. Again, birds, we all know about birds. Again, they all have lungs, they've got feathers, they've got beaks. Okay. Do not forget they can't all fly. I mentioned earlier on the penguins, of course, they can't fly. They do, however, have a constant body temperature, and they do reproduce internally, and they lay eggs. Now again, they lay eggs with the shell. If they didn't lay eggs with the shell, what would happen in fact then is that the eggs would dry out. So they need to lay eggs with a shell then. So that's birds. Let's move on to the final one then for today, which is the fish. So we have our fish here. Again, we know quite a bit about fish. There's different kinds of fish. Here's our good old-fashioned Nemo fish. Nemo was very popular, in fact, then for a while when the film was on. People bought these fish. They're called clownfish. But the worst thing is they're very hard to look after. And people bought a lot of Nemo fish and then they died. So just need to watch that. But we have a fish here. They absorb oxygen, of course, through their gills. Normally around here you kind of see the gills on the fish. They have got wet scales, unlike the reptiles which have dry scales. Again, they've got this temperature which constantly changes. And again, they also reproduce externally and lay eggs. So the female fish might lay eggs in the water, then the male fish comes along, puts the sperm cells on top, and then what happens is the eggs get fertilized then. So that is what happens then with these fish then. So again, that's what I wanted to talk to you about then in terms of classification then. Now over to you then. Okay, what I want you to do then is I want you then to try and fill in then the first few pages of the handout. Now that handout then was put up on Google Classroom a wee while ago. It looks a bit like this. Now I'm going to ask you to print this out then if you haven't already done so. Some of you, of course, then we're doing this last week and filling in the first few pages last week. If not, then of course you should be filling that in now. Then you need to print it out, and I'm going to ask you to make sure that the first 6 pages are filled in, please. Now that's talking about classifications, talking about then there's a few word searches in there, a few other bits and pieces for you to do in there, but also want you to finish up to page 6 then, which talks then about how animals are classified, and also then how then our vertebrate groups are organized too then. So that's classification. So that was classification. Now, as I said, then what I want you to do is I want you to fill in this sheet now. Okay, this sheet then is on Google Classroom. And again, you might have done the first few pages last week. The first bit then was a little bit then about then a word search. She should have done that. After that, you had a bit about classification. Now again, you can use simply the glossary in the textbook then for the definition of classification. After that, it says then brainstorm the groups you think you can use to identify living organisms in biology. Now again, that could be things such as I mentioned earlier on: are they big? Are they small? Do they walk on 2 legs? Do they walk on 4 legs? Can they fly? Do they live in the sea? That kind of stuff could all go into that little page there. Then. After that, it talks then about the 5 main groups. Well, again, if you want, you can use your textbook for those. It's on the presentation as well, which I just gave you, but it's on there as well. If you are using the textbook, I think it's on page 145. Should look it up here. On page 145, sorry, not page 145 at all, page 133, you will see then here about the different groups then. Okay, so again, you can use that for some of those different words there as well. Okay. Then on page 5 here, it talks about different groups. So what I want you to do for this little bit here is I want you to do a bit of research on the computer. I want you to find a picture of an animal, a small picture of an animal, and stick it on there, any animal. Then I want you to do a plant. I want you to do a protist. I want you to do then a monera or a bacteria on there as well. So again, you've got then the different groups. So left on animals, plants, the fungus. Sorry, I just mentioned fungus. So basically, what you want to do is put your 5 different groups in here. Again, you can do it. It talks about then how we have then a hierarchy diagram. That simply means a bit like this one here. So we kind of have all of the different organisms, and then divided into then those 5 groups you see on page 133 then. Okay, so different, just the kind of, it's going to be really organisms here, and then branch off here, animals, and the picture of an animal. Then we've got then a monera, a picture of a bacterium, fungus and picture of fungus, protists and picture of protist, and then plants and picture of plant. So just cut and stick, that's on page 5 then. Okay, and last of all, page 6. Page 6 here then is a bit then about the animal kingdom itself. You have to talk about how it's divided into vertebrates and invertebrates. Also mention the differences between the two. Obviously, vertebrates have a backbone, whereas invertebrates do not have a backbone. And then actually then to divide the vertebrates into 5 main groups. So you've got then your mammals, you've got then your reptiles, you've got your fish, you've got the amphibians, and you have your birds. It then says here to complete the table below, identify features of each group. So you need to say, a little bit about mammals. Okay, it could be simply be things such as have fur and have mammary glands. Fish, there might be things like gills and what have you. Basically, I want you to write down just a few words in about each of the 5 different groups here on page 6. So again, try your best to fill in pages 1 to page 6, please. Okay, and that's it for this week. Hopefully, I will actually see you again at some stage here as well. Goodbye.